Art recalls his past life as a king. In this world, the king was no more than a puppet, while the council was the one that actually governed the country, managing its politics and economy. In a world riddled with problems, wars were replaced with duels and armies with kings. Art was one of these puppet kings. Tired of this life, he decided to retire. Despite being the strongest, he was still an orphan with all his loved ones gone and would do anything to be with them. In the present, he wakes up after having survived the long fall. The bandit mage, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. Art knows that if he wants to survive, he will have to become stronger. He struggles to move and grabs a piece of fruit sitting on a log beside him. He gulps it down along with his remaining water. He uses all his strength to get up. His injured body just refuses to do what he wants. After getting up, the first thing he does is retrieve his dagger, which is still stuck in the bandit's leg. When he looks up at the cliff, he is surprised at how he managed to survive. He doesn't even know how long it has been since the fall, but it doesn't matter. If he wants to survive, he must keep moving. Just as he starts walking away, he hears an eerie voice. He gets scared and quickly takes cover behind a tree. At first, he thinks that maybe the voice is coming from the dead bandit. Art takes a stick and pokes the bandit just to make sure he is dead. The voice continues speaking, telling Art that it's not coming from the corpse. He is relieved that the bandit is not alive when suddenly he hears a voice coming from the bushes. He readies the dagger to meet the potential threat, as he knows better than to trust a strange voice. He asks the voice who she is, and if she is the one who saved him. It was a false alarm, as the culprit behind the sound was just a rabbit. The voice replies to Art's second question, confirming that they were the ones who saved him. As for his first question, he will have to come to their dwelling if he wants to find out. At first, he is hesitant to do what the voice is saying, but she tells him that she is the only one who can help him reunite with his family. The mention of his family floods his mind with questions. Are they alive? Did they make it to Ixyrus safely? Art, desperate to see his family again, surrenders and requests the voice's assistance in finding them. Just as the voice agrees, Art's eyes turn crimson and his vision focuses on a massive boulder in the heart of the wood. With that, he starts his journey towards her dwelling. While walking, Art couldn't help but think about the voice. He wonders what kind of magic she used to rescue him and why she chose to save only him and not the bandit. While trekking through the forest, he hears the sound of a river. Having not bathed in a while, he rushes towards it and jumps into the river. As the sun begins to set, he continues his journey to the rock. Art realizes that the forest is abundant with mana, but it's unusual that there are no beasts roaming around. As night falls, he finally arrives at the rock, and the voice directs him to enter the crevice. While proceeding further, Art stumbles and falls into a cavern. As he stands up, he is petrified to see an enormous creature perched on a throne, crafted from rocks. He is so scared that he falls back again. The creature resembles a colossal suit of armor with crimson luminescent lights for its eyes and mouth. It is the source of the voice that Art has been hearing throughout his journey. The monster gets up and starts moving toward him. As the creature approaches him, Art notices a big gash in its stomach. It seems like it is injured. The monster extends its colossal hand towards Art and assists him in standing up. She also tells him that it'll take some time for her to open a dimensional rift to transport him home. So in the meantime, he can stay in the cave and eat the fruits there to nourish himself. Art expresses gratitude and proceeds to pick up the unfamiliar fruit, which looks like an oversized grape. As they consume the fruit, Art reminisces about the joyful moments when he dined with his family. As the two eat, he asks for her name and she introduces herself as Sylvia. With his initial fear of Sylvia's appearance diminishing, he feels more at ease and proceeds to ask her all the questions that have been bothering him. She tells him that this place is located between the Beast Glades and the Forest of Elshire. No one comes near because she's been warding off anyone who comes close. Art is the first person to have ever entered this place. Sylvia reveals to Art that she resides alone in the cavern as she has no one left. Additionally, she informs him that she has enemies who want something she possesses, and her wound resulted from her last battle. When Art inquires about why Sylvia saved him, she confesses that she herself doesn't know the reason, but perhaps it's because she has become lonely. As her wound starts to fester and she needs to be in good physical condition to create the portal, Sylvia bids Art goodnight and excuses herself for the evening. As the fearsome figure begins to walk away, Art couldn't help but think how lonely she looked. Sylvia suddenly turns back and tells him that in case he was wondering, his family and friends are safe. Upon hearing this, Art is overcome with emotion and starts to cry. Art and Sylvia's initial encounter was fraught with fear and uncertainty. However, as time passed, they grew closer and began spending hours chatting while she worked on the dimensional rift. Weeks turned into months, and Art began to understand what kind of a person this mysterious being is. Sylvia is the very definition of the phrase, "Don't judge a book by its cover." Even though she looks terrifying, she is kind and gentle. She reminds Art of his mother, who was also kind and gentle. On the other hand, his hatred for the bandits who caused him separate from his family grows stronger, and he promises himself to kill every last one of them. Sensing his animosity, Sylvia flicks him on his forehead, sending him flying. She tells Art that letting his heart be consumed by hatred will only cause harm to himself. Instead, she advises him to move on with his life and live with pride. Art is struck deeply by being lectured by a monster that looks like the epitome of evil. Sylvia's words about facing the future with a smile and learning from misfortunes resonates with him. Growing curious, she asks him how he managed to form his mana core at such an early age. He simply replies by telling her that he is a natural-born genius. With that being the case, she decides to teach him a new technique. Art is left surprised as Sylvia demonstrates her technique of gathering mana while moving. She tells him that with enough practice, he can even gather mana while fighting. However, when Art tries to do it himself, he fails to do so. Sylvia explains that monsters are born with the ability to multitask mana collection and movement, while humans typically awaken to their mana abilities later in life and struggle to do so. However, as a natural-born genius with an early mana core, Art has the potential to master this technique with practice. While Sylvia prepares the portal, Art starts practicing the new technique. Although he finds it difficult at first, he eventually manages to do it. Excited to share his progress with Sylvia, he looks over to her, but notices she has fallen over in pain as her wound worsens. Art hurries over to check on her, only to find that her bleeding has significantly worsened. He tries to flip her over, but due to her size, he is unable to do so. With the help of the new technique he recently learned, Art concentrates on gathering mana and successfully manages to turn her over. As he examines her wound, Art's heart sinks as he realizes that creating the portal had caused it to worsen significantly. He understands now that she had gone through with the risky endeavor despite the consequences, solely for his sake. Overcome with emotion, Art breaks down into tears as he weeps uncontrollably. Sylvia attempts to console him. Despite her worsening condition, she urges him not to blame himself and reminds him that their time together is limited. She expresses that she would hate for them to spend their remaining moments dwelling on the past. In an attempt to comfort Art, Sylvia reminds him that he is actually doing her a favor by helping her exit the treacherous cave more quickly. However, her words fail to stem his tears. As Sylvia's life begins to fade away, she makes the decision to reveal her true form. The dark armor that once encased her body begins to fall, revealing a magnificent white dragon in its place. Art is left shocked, but Sylvia tells him that they don't have much time. Now that she has undone her veil, they will be coming soon. With urgency in her voice, Sylvia rushes over to complete the portal and explains to Art that there are important things she must tell him before they part ways. As she speaks, she instructs him to cover the egg with the feather to conceal its aura. She then touches him, causing a strange glowing pattern to suddenly materialize on both of his arms. She assures him that all will be revealed in due time, but with time running out, she can only create a portal that will teleport him somewhere in the vicinity of his house. However, before they can depart, a strange monster suddenly enters the cave, causing it to start collapsing. He has the same dark armor that she was wearing. He addresses her as Lady Sylvia and demands her to hand something over. Before the monster can approach them any further, she uses her powers to freeze time for everyone except herself and Art, with time suspended around them. Sylvia makes a confession to Art, revealing that she intentionally prolonged the teleportation spell so that she could spend more time with him. Before they parted ways, as her life begins to slip away, she implores Art to call her grandma just this once. Fueled by grief and love for his departing friend, Art clings to Sylvia's wings and insists that they go together. However, she bids him farewell and flings him toward the portal. Just before he is teleported away, Art honors Sylvia's final wish and calls her grandma, acknowledging the bond they shared. He finds himself suddenly teleported to a forest, and the first thing that comes to his mind is the realization that it was likely the last time he would ever see Sylvia. With his heart heavy with grief, His mind becomes flooded with memories from the last 4 months that he spent with her. Despite the brevity of their time together, Sylvia had treated him as if he were her own kin. As he lies on the ground, consumed by grief, he is suddenly startled by a voice in his head. It is Sylvia's voice, unmistakably so. However, he soon realizes that it is merely a recording of Sylvia's last message for him before they parted ways. As a parting gift, Sylvia infused her will onto Art, telling him that his future development as a mage would depend on how well he uses this gift. She explains that once his mana core surpasses the white stage, he will hear from her again and she will reveal everything to him. As Sylvia bids him farewell, she addresses Art as King Grey, the name he had in his past life, which leaves him with lingering questions long after her voice fades away. He wonders how long she had known his true identity and why she had kept it a secret from him. Focusing on reuniting with his family, Art sets aside his questions and decides to climb a tree for a better view of his surroundings. From atop the tree, he quickly realizes that he's in Elshire Forest. Despite being barely able to use mana rotation, he's able to use magic for a much longer time. With this boost in power, he's able to move around the forest much faster. He jumps from one tree to another with great speed. As he moves, he suddenly hears the faint sound of a carriage rumbling through the woods. As Art approaches the carriage, his curiosity quickly turns to horror as he hears the faint but unmistakable sound of a child's cry. Drawing closer, he realizes that the carriage belongs to a group of ruthless slave traders who have kidnapped a young elf girl. Rage boils inside him as he watches the girl's desperate struggles and hears her cries for help. Despite his eagerness to get home, he needed a plan, but Art realizes that dealing with the slave traders is his best course of action right now. He realized that attacking them head-on would be a suicidal move, so he decided to follow them through the forest, utilizing his mana rotation to gather mana all the while. As they journeyed, Art remained vigilant, waiting patiently for the opportune moment when the traders would let their guard down. At long last, Art's patience paid off, and the perfect moment to strike presented itself. As the night descended, he made the decision to attack the slave traders. Using his quick thinking, he threw an acorn at one of the forest hounds, startling it and causing a commotion. Upon hearing the hound's roar, one of the slave traders goes to investigate, providing Art with the opportunity he needs. Moving swiftly, he takes out the slave trader with a mana blade, disabling him before he could raise an alarm. He takes the bandit's dagger while leaving his body to be devoured by the forest hounds. As the forest hounds continue to make noise, another slave trader becomes suspicious and comes to investigate. Upon discovering chewed-up remains of his comrade, he is taken aback, but before he could react, Art swiftly sneaks up on him from behind and slashes him with his newly acquired dagger. With 2 of the slave traders now eliminated, Art is left with only 2 more to deal with. The last 2 slave traders sensed something amiss and became wary as they approached the carriage. One of them spotted Art and lunged at him with his sword, but Art dodged the attack and quickly countered by striking the man's legs. The last man hears the screams of his comrade and comes to help. The injured man warns his comrade, telling him to be careful as Art is a mage. It is revealed that the last man is also a mage. He gets excited about the prospect of capturing Art alive as a kid mage would get them a very high price. Art readies himself for the incoming attack, but the slave trader proves to be much faster and more agile, darting behind him in an instant. Art narrowly avoids the initial attack and retaliates by throwing a rock and then his dagger, but the man catches the dagger with ease. Once again, using his impressive speed, he suddenly appears before Art and delivers a powerful kick. The slave trader picks up the injured Art from the ground, but Art refuses to give up. With a burst of energy, Art uses fire magic to cause an explosion on the man's arm, causing it to be completely burned. Art uses this opportunity to throw his dagger at the man from behind. It goes right through his neck, instantly killing him. With others dead, he goes to finish off the last injured man. In the carriage, Art finds the elf girl with her hands and legs tied up. After untying her, Art decides to cover her eyes, not wanting her to see the gruesome scene he had left behind. He carries her a safe distance away from the carriage before opening her eyes. The girl expresses her gratitude towards him for rescuing her, but as he prepares to leave, she grabs onto his shirt with a pleading expression. He assumes that she doesn't want to be left alone, but reminds her that she is an elf and should be safe in the forest. However, she tells him that the forest beasts only fear adult elves, causing Art to reluctantly agree to help her find her way home. But to make things more difficult, she doesn't even seem to know her way home. Despite her lack of knowledge of the route, Art had already committed to helping her and thus returns to the wreckage of the carriage to gather supplies for their journey. Though he hopes that it won't be a long one, he takes warm clothes and other supplies from the carriage. Because of the mage's attack, the carriage got completely wrecked, so they won't be able to use it. After releasing the forest hounds, he goes back to the elf girl. He gives her clothes that he found in the carriage, and they begin their journey to find the elves. They walk in the vague direction that the girl pointed towards. As night falls, Art sets up a tent for them to sleep in. He tells Tessia to rest while he keeps watch. He wanted to use this time to figure out this will that Sylvia left him with, but his plans are quickly interrupted. Tessia comes out of the tent and asks him to come in as well. She seems to be scared of being alone, but is unable to ask. She makes up the excuse that he will attract monsters if he sits out, and so he should keep watch while being inside. Art agrees to come in and sits beside her as she tries to go to sleep. As the sun rises, they resume their journey through the forest. Art's mind constantly wanders to his family back home, wondering if they're safe and if they're missing him. However, his thoughts are interrupted by the sharp pain emanating from his mana core, causing him to wince in agony. This pain would come unpredictably and would be almost unbearable for him. He decides not to tell Tessia as he doesn't want her to worry. Slowly, the pain started coming more and more frequently, and every time he would hide it from Tessia. As more days passed, she started to recognize their surroundings, a sure sign that they're getting closer. Despite Art's efforts to strengthen himself with mana, the pain in his mana core only seems to be getting worse, and it's becoming harder to hide it from the worried elf. Their journey has slowed down due to Tessia's growing exhaustion. However, as they continue walking, Tessia spots a green mark on a nearby tree, which signifies that they are getting closer to the elven territory. Finally, they arrive at the teleportation gate. As soon as Tessia activates the gate, the pair are teleported to the elven city, which is stunningly beautiful and leaves Art speechless. Suddenly, a group of elven knights teleport in front of them, and they get down on their knees to welcome Tessia, addressing her as the royal princess. Art is left stunned as he realizes that he has just rescued a princess. Shortly after, Tessia's concerned parents, the king and queen of Elenoir, arrive to reunite with their daughter. They are accompanied by Tessia's grandfather, Virion Erelith. It's a name noted in every history book. He is the former king of Elenoir and the man who led the last war against the humans of the Sapin Kingdom. With a little push from Art, Tessia rushes over to embrace her parents. As thanks for saving your daughter, the king invites Art to their home. They also want to know what happened to their daughter. Despite his gentle tone, Art could tell from his eyes that it was not a request but an order. As they arrive at their home, he is awestruck to see the huge castle. Tessia orders the maids to take Art to his room and clean him up. Art tells her that he would first like to explain what happened to the king first. He sits at a long table with the royal family, along with their guard. Art formally introduces himself to the king and queen in the most respectful way possible. He begins the story of their journey. He tells them that he ended up in the forest after getting separated from his parents due to a bandit attack. He cleverly leaves out the part about Sylvia. When he eventually gets to the part about Tessia getting kidnapped by the slave traders, the king becomes furious. He slams his fist on the table, saying he should have known it was humans. Art humbly reminds the king that slave trading is a profession and not a race. This leaves the guards furious, and they all point their swords at him. Virion gestures to the guards to put down their weapons and asks Art how he managed to rescue her, despite being a child. Art tells him that he is a mage, and so he was able to eliminate the slave traders and rescue Tessia. The guards once again get angry and accuse him of lying. Art tells them that whether they believe him or not, the fact is that the princess has returned home safely, and now his only wish is to return to his family in the kingdom of Sapini.